So my name is Bridget Kelly. I am the INFORMAS module leader for food promotion and have been since the inception of INFORMAS in 2012. So we're going to begin this session by giving an overview of the food promotion module. And then that will be followed by 3 abstract presentations relating to food marketing monitoring that has been occurring across our countries. We welcome questions that you might have, and hopefully we'll have time to address as many of those as possible in relation to the abstract presentations particularly. And if you'd like to, you can post questions in the chat and we'll come to those, and I'll moderate those as I go through. So firstly, I would like to introduce our leadership team for the food promotion module. We are an all-female powered troop with expertise in food marketing in our respective countries and across countries internationally. So this team was formed just mid this year when the structure of INFORMAS changed somewhat and we went to more of a leadership team model rather than just a single leader for each module. And we are all looking forward to working together to continue to build and develop the INFORMAS food promotion protocols, and for collaborating with in-country research teams to apply and refine the monitoring approaches. The food marketing, as I'm sure you're aware, is recognised as a global priority policy issue for obesity and NCD prevention. And the primacy of monitoring of food promotions has been repeatedly highlighted in global policy guidelines and mandates. And that has been identified as important for stimulating policy action, assessing the implementation of food marketing policies, and building evidence on the effectiveness of policy action. For example, the WHO set of recommendations on the marketing of food to children include multiple recommendations for monitoring and evaluation, including this recommendation here for research on the extent, nature, and effects of food marketing within countries. So food marketing monitoring and evaluation can have 3 major research foci. So research on the extent of exposure to marketing, including the number of people reached, and the frequency and contact with commercial messages. The persuasive power of marketing, which relates to the message content and design, and the impact of marketing, which is the effect of marketing on children and caregivers, food-related knowledge, attitudes, behaviours, and health outcomes. INFORMAS protocols for food marketing have focused on monitoring primarily exposure to marketing messages and, to a lesser extent, the power of food marketing. Children are exposed to marketing across all media with which they engage and all settings in which they gather. To date, INFORMAS protocols have focused on just a few of these media and settings, and namely that includes advertising on television and outdoor advertising around schools and in schools through sponsorship of children's sport. So far, researchers from 27 countries have engaged with these protocols for monitoring food marketing, either as planning or currently undertaking studies, or having completed and published these studies. So there has really been great uptake of the protocols that we have had to date. We were able to pull some of these data on TV food advertising and compare potential exposures for children across 22 countries. And the published paper is shown at the bottom there. That included over 11,000 hours of television broadcasting. The headline finding from this study was that the rates of unhealthy food advertising were significantly higher during peak viewing times for children, and those peak viewing times were defined as the top 5 hours of broadcasting for children based on audience numbers. There are essentially 2 alternate approaches that can be used to assess food marketing exposure and power. The first approach is to undertake detailed assessments of marketing exposure and power on priority or selected media and settings. This is the approach that's been taken by the INFORMAS Food Promotion protocols to date. So it involves the comprehensive assessment of food marketing for a limited number of media and settings. The intention is to collect and analyse a representative sample from the media or settings that are selected to quantify usual marketing patterns and potential exposures. But there are limitations to this approach, and that primarily relates to being only able to monitor a limited number of media or settings concurrently due to the resources and time required. We are planning on developing an INFORMAS protocol for monitoring digital food marketing in this way. Online marketing is an area that our leadership team have a particular interest in and have each been developing and testing methods for data capture and analyses. And we're going to pool our expertise to develop an INFORMAS protocol in this space. And I'm going to be speaking next on an Australian study on digital marketing that we did. A second approach is to undertake rapid assessments of food marketing across media and settings simultaneously. This approach can highlight the need for comprehensive marketing restrictions that apply across media and settings by showing that marketing is not confined to one particular source, but across multiple platforms. It also may be less resource and time intensive, but depending on the methods used, it may provide only indicative estimates of exposure. And our future plan is to also develop a rapid assessment protocol in this way. There are two options that we are considering, and ultimately we may use a combination of both of these for this rapid assessment protocol. So the first is the development of an overarching monitoring framework across media and settings that uses small samples of media, but applies a similar approach to identifying marketing within these media that we are currently using in the INFORMAS protocols. So, for example, taking a small sample of TV broadcasting compared to the protocol that's currently used for capturing 8 days of broadcasting, 18 hours a day for 3 channels. This kind of overarching protocol has been attempted previously, such as a manual published by Consumers International in 2011, which took this approach. The intention would be to include detailed data templates and syntax for analyses, and the sample sizes for the media would be derived based on reliability assessments using our larger, more extensive databases and comparing potential rates of marketing against the smaller and larger data samples. The second option is to capture actual exposures to marketing from children themselves, and that would entail collecting information on all marketing exposures seen by a representative sample of children across a short time period. Participants would be asked to capture what they see, instances they see over the sample period, or we may use ecological momentary assessments where they are asked to make repeated observations of their marketing exposures. Both of these options could lead to scorecards for countries for marketing exposures across media and settings and over time. Lastly, just a final note on emerging approaches for identifying and coding instances of marketing from media samples. So these tasks take up really the bulk of time involved in monitoring food marketing. So for example, fast forwarding through TV broadcasting to identify ad breaks, and then within those, watching all the ads to identify relevant promotions, classifying the ads according to the criteria. There is research currently underway, including by members of the leadership team for INFORMAS, to develop systems and approaches for automating the identification and coding of food marketing images, which are underpinned by artificial intelligence technology. So while image recognition software are trained to detect and code for local foods and brands, It is possible that these systems could be adapted to other countries, such as developing country-specific image libraries that include all of the foods and brands that would be seen in a particular country. So that's another area that we're currently looking at.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all very much. So that was a recording from Professor Bridget Kelly, the model lead for food promotion. What I'm going to do now is to focus on aspects of this model that we implemented in Ghana in the next, I think, Phyllis, is it 30 or 40 minutes? How many minutes do I have?
We should have 40 minutes, but we're a bit behind time. So
okay, okay, the next 40 minutes. So the presentation I'm using actually prepared by Stephanie. I think she's on the call. She might be on the call today, and then Bridget, which we have used in our trainings in the past. So before I share those experiences from Ghana, I just want to reiterate some of the content that Bridget indicated in her introductory presentation. Sometimes we use these terms interchangeably: marketing, advertising, promotion. There are subtle differences. And so I would like to begin with these terminologies, clarify them before I proceed. So WHO defines marketing as any form of commercial communication or a message that is designed to or has the effect of increasing the recognition, appeal, or consumption of a particular product or services. In our case, we're talking about food here, healthy or unhealthy. And so it comprises anything that acts to advertise, as we know, or also otherwise promote this food product. The definition, as you can see from above, focuses on not only the effect of the act, but also the intention. So I thought I should clarify this before we continue. And the potency of any marketing act depends on or exploits these 4 Ps. So product, price, place, and promotion. And most of the time, actually, nearly all the times, they are not implemented sequentially, but concurrently for impact. And so talking about impact, once they are deployed, the 4 Ps are deployed, one goal is that to expose you to a product. In addition to the exposure, there are other elements that they would use to help them convince you, right? So power. And so power here relates to the creative content or the design of these marketing techniques or the execution of same. And so you bring power, or you bring 4 Ps, you bring power and then exposure together, and then they have an impact. And those impact, for the purpose of this conversation, impact on our food preferences, impact on our purchases, impact on consumption. And sometimes for kids where they don't have the ability to purchase or purchasing power, the other power that they have is pester power. And so they would see, they'll get convinced, and then they'll pester their parent to procure or buy for them to eat. Okay.
Well, can you share your slide there?
Okay, I'm sharing my slide, but I can stop and do that again. Okay. I thought I was sharing the slides. Okay, can you see?
Yes, we can see now.
Okay, so thank you. And sorry about that. Yes. And so, yeah, so pester power. So Bridget talked about channels and then settings, right? And so marketing can be done using different channels on TV, radio, internet, social media, magazines, and what have you. So in Ghana, we explored some of them, not all of them. And so using INFORMAS' expanded approach, as you can see here, you have the minimal approach, just focuses on, say, one dominant form, or the expanded approach. It looks at different forms of channels and settings. And so that's what we adopted. And so we looked at what was being promoted or marketed on TV, in and around schools, and also in supermarket. Okay. We are also aware that for these work to impact policy and for the policy to be implemented effectively, you would need a fit for purpose nutrient profiling to underpin the implementation of those research outputs that are the policies. And so for Africa, as far as marketing is concerned, the WHO has developed a nutrient profiling model that is being used to regulate what can be marketed, what can be promoted, advertised, or otherwise. So several categories of food, about 18 categories, and within them you have subcategories. I will just show you soon quickly. This model has identified a number of nutrients that they are concerned about. So total fat, saturated fat, total sugars, added sugars, sodium, and energy. And so you can see here, if you take chocolate, for example, chocolate and then sugar confectionery, if the total fats in any of these products is more than 8 per 100 gram, so 8 grams per 100 gram, these guidelines would stipulate that government not allow the product to be marketed, to be advertised. So 8 grams. So you can do the same for total sugar. So if you take chocolate and then the total sugar per 100 gram is more than 6, it won't be allowed to be marketed. If you look at fruit, for example, so fresh, frozen fruits and vegetables, legumes, root and tubers, they are permitted. They are permitted. The model would not restrict them from being marketed and, of course, therefore from being consumed. However, if these get processed even minimally by addition of salt or something to them, they are no longer treated or in this category. They are moved into another category where these model restrictions are applied. Okay, so to move on to the channels and then the settings that we apply this model in Ghana, I begin with TV, television monitoring. And so the objective of this particular component of the model is to describe the extent and nature of unhealthy food and non-alcoholic beverages that are being advertised on TV. So that is one. And INFORMAS, as you have just been told or you are already aware, is an international network. And so when we are doing this, you want to do this in such a way that data can be compared across countries. So compare levels and the nature of advertising. One is over time. You just don't do it cross-sectionally and then it ends. You do it over and over again so you can see whether things are improving or getting worse. To compare levels and nature advertising across countries, as I indicated. And of course, we're doing this not just for academic purposes. We want the data to influence or impact policy. Once the data has been collected, so from the TV monitoring, that data would have to be coded. And this is one way of coding it. So you look at the advert from TV and then you code whether or not it is food or a drink product, whether it is a food or drink product promoted in the advert, whether it's food or drink company or branded without a brand without food or drink product. And so all the way to whether or not it is not food, but it's alcoholic product, or it is not food, it's also not alcoholic product. And then you code it as, you code it accordingly. Okay. When we are coding, you recall I talked about exposure and power. When we are coding, we are also interested in finding out whether those adverts or marketing strategies were powered with either cartoons, or licensed characters, whether they have celebrities, whether they have movie tie-ins, whether they had designations, say for kids, and you have children being featured in there. So you need that when you're coding, especially if your work is in relation to helping implement the World Health Assembly Resolutions 6314 that enjoins countries to regulate marketing of unhealthy food that are targeting children. You would need to identify all this, whether children are being targeted or not. So here, apart from power, so we also look at premium offers. So whether in the adverts you are told to buy one and get 2 free or buy one get one free, whether they are price discounts, whether it is linked to social charity. In Ghana, there's one of the, I think, mineral water that is being sold that you're told if you buy a bottle, a percentage of the money you pay would go into helping people with certain clinical conditions. So all these are coded. And so I show you here one of the studies that we did in Ghana implementing this, and it looked at healthiness of food and non-alcoholic beverages marketed on popular Ghanaian television channels targeting children. Irene is on call today, and she'll be presenting these during the panel sessions. But briefly, what you see here is that nearly 2,000 adverts were recorded, and about 1/3 of them, of these adverts, not all adverts are food, right? So about 1/3 of them were food. And she went ahead to analyze these 590 adverts that were of food and beverages, and found out that 1/4 of them were sugar sweetened beverages. Okay, so these are some of the considerations to make when you are planning to implement the TV monitoring component of this model. You need to be able to tell whether or not TV is an important marketing platform in the country. It may not be TV, it may be radio, and so therefore you may not do TV, but do radio. You need to find out if there are existing regulations or pledges that to be taken into account. So there are regulations in countries, for example, if you take the trans fatty acids regulations. So if they are not supposed to be marketed or sold, you can then design your study to confirm whether or not that pledge that exists is being adhered to by industry. The target age group, as I indicated earlier, depending on the focus of your study, you may be interested in children, you may be interested in the entire population. The recording, although they are standards, you record from 6 a.m. to 12 midnight. Again, depending on the focus of the study, this time can be shortened or increased. Okay, I've talked about nutrient profiling already. There is relevance in helping implement this fully. Okay, so TV monitoring, that's one channel, and then school zones as well. So assessment of this also within school zones, similar objectives as in the TV monitoring, just that this is focused in and around schools. And so we did that in Ghana. The sampling approaches, I wouldn't have enough time to go through that, but we try to sample in a way that you get a representative sample. So you can't go and do this in one school in a district and say you've implemented a model. No, you may not be able to do this in one district. You may do it in several districts, depending on the scope. If you are doing it to be representative of an entire country, you can't go and do it in one region and you say you've implemented a model in your country. So representative sampling. Okay, so in Ghana, we focused on one region, and that was Greater Accra region, and we chose 200 schools from 6 representative districts of the region. That's how we went about it. And within that, again, I wouldn't be able to go through the specific processes, but if you go to a school, which area are you going to be mapping? Are you using radial buffers? If you're using a radial buffers, there are different buffers, 250 radius from the center or entrance of the school around, or 500, some use 500. Others also use network buffers. And so in Ghana, we use the road network buffers. So the roads that people use to their schools, that is where these adverts are usually mounted. And so we did 250 meters radial buffers around the roads leading to the schools. And then we mapped all adverts, whether food or not, within these 250. And when you are mapping them, these are what you look for, right? Whether the type of adverts are the billboard, as you can see here, are the posters, are the banners, are the flags, are they freestanding adverts you can see? Are they digital signs? This is an example. Are they painted buildings? You can see all these are mapped. All these are mapped and then they are recorded. So by mapping, you take the coordinates and then you would see later how that is then analyzed. And then recording, we record the attributes. So this again is one other study we implemented in Ghana. So I think Gideon will be presenting data relating to this and another study linked to this. So he looked at commercial advertising of food at the University of Ghana. Again, so he mapped over 500 adverts. 50% of them were food, and 60% of those food adverts were energy dense and nutrient poor food. Of these, 4 out of 10, again, were also sugar-sweetened beverages. Okay. This is another study that we implemented as part of the Meals for NCD study. So we went through that process, so you can see the findings here. What you see here are the 6 districts that we went into, and the triangles you see, some of them are green, others are red, represent adverts, and all of them are food adverts. Those that are red are food adverts that we have assessed to be unhealthy, and those that are green are those that we assess to be healthy. And so that's how this model focusing on school settings can be applied. Okay, so I would move on to some considerations that you need to take into if you are planning to implement these in your setting or jurisdiction. So again, similar to the previous, are there existing regulations or pledges to be taken into account? The target group of population, definition of a school zone. Of course, there are working definitions that, depending on the focus of your study, you may have a study-specific definition of what constitutes a school zone. You need to take into consideration, if you want a representative sample, you can't get all your sample from urbanized areas of your district and say you have a representative sample. If there are rural areas where schools are, they need to be included. Sample size, and if you have pilot data, you can use that to help you compute a sample size that is large enough to power the analysis that you plan to do. And again, nutrient profiling as well. Then the last bit, retail or in-store environment. And so you can do the assessment on TV, in our schools, also in retail outlets. And so in Ghana, we focus on one retail outlet. We looked at supermarket. And so I'll share with you what we did. You go to the supermarket first, map the supermarket so that you know the exact location. Go in there and record what is being marketed, what is being sold first, of course. And then within the supermarket, you might also find marketing marketing approaches or strategies, and so you record them. Okay. As part of those marketing approaches, there are some that, of course, would be based on the way the food is designed or placement, the amount of space that it occupies, self-space, whether or not it is located at strategic positions, prominence. And then also, you might also have promotional flyers. It's important to collect those flyers, then analyze them as well. And I'll show you an example of a study that we did in Ghana that looked at all these, both promotional flyers and then placement, but also the content that is being sold or marketed. And so this one, led by Akosia, should be presenting this during the para session, looked at how healthy our supermarkets are in Ghana. And so she was interested in looking at availability of healthy and unhealthy food. So over 100 supermarkets were identified that were eligible. Most of them agreed to be part of the study. And you could see here, we measured the shelf space of all the supermarkets that contain food. And you would see most of the space was allocated to what she classified here as not healthy food. For fresh fruit and vegetables occupied an insignificant amount of the space. Only 0.4% of the total space that was allocated for food was given to fresh fruit, and then fresh vegetables and salted canned vegetables, only 0.8%, less than 1%. And so in conclusion, after her analysis, she showed that for every 1 meter square of shelf area that was allocated to healthy food, you had 6 meters allocated to 6 meters squared allocated to unhealthy food. And you could also see here, using the NOVA classification, most of the food that were being stocked and so were ultra processed food. This is what we did with the promotional flyers. And unsurprisingly, we found out that of 79 flyers that we obtained, 100% of them were promoting foods that we classified as unhealthy. Okay, again, considerations to make if you have to use this approach. So types of stores that you are interested in, is it supermarket, is it corner shop, is it provision? That decision has to be made with good reasons, backing whichever outlet you choose. types of in-store measures that you have to do, take into account the type of store, area of the provisions, especially in Ghana, we had to choose district based on poverty incidents or using Accra poverty map. And so we selected districts that were known to be deprived as well as those that were not. Those considerations needs to be taken into account. And then types of promotions that you're interested in. I talked about the 4 Ps. Are you interested in price? Are you interested in on-pack promotions on the product? Are you interested in posters, displays, as I talked about? And sometimes it's also good to interview people, right? To have human beings behind the stories in the images. So you could interview children, parents, or store owners. Okay, so I think this is what I would like to share with you. If you have questions, I don't know how much time I have. If you have questions or you want me to clarify anything, this would be when we should do that.